Miami's biggest gamble has finally begun. Everything could change with one phone call. Not just for Giannis Antetokounmpo, not just for the Milwaukee Bucks, but for the entire balance of power in the Eastern Conference. Because after months of whispers, endless speculation, and behind-the-scenes negotiations, the NBA has reached a moment where one decision could redefine multiple franchises overnight. For the Miami Heat, this isn't simply another offseason rumor. This feels like the organization's biggest gamble since the days of the Big Three. The pressure has never been higher, the expectations have never been louder. And according to league insiders, Miami continues to be one of the teams most heavily linked to Giannis if Milwaukee ultimately decides to move on from its two-time MVP. But here's where the story becomes far more complicated than the headlines suggest. Some analysts believe landing Giannis would instantly push Miami back into championship contention. Others argue the Heat would be sacrificing too much of their future for a superstar entering a physically demanding stage of his career. And then there's another camp that believes Miami isn't even the biggest threat in this race anymore, because another powerhouse may be quietly waiting for the perfect moment to strike. What makes this story so fascinating isn't just the possibility of a blockbuster trade, it's the growing divide across the basketball world. Every new report seems to create even more questions. Is Giannis truly ready to leave Milwaukee? Is Miami really his preferred destination? Can Pat Riley finally pull off the blockbuster that has slipped away so many times before? Or will this become another painful chapter in a long list of missed superstar pursuits? The timing couldn't be more dramatic. Milwaukee reportedly wants clarity before the NBA draft, meaning every front office with championship ambitions is watching the situation closely. Every insider update sends social media into a frenzy. Every rumor creates new theory. Every interview is dissected for hidden meaning. Meanwhile, Heat fans are experiencing something they've felt several times over the last few years. Hope mixed with anxiety. They've watched Miami chase elite names before. Some deals came close, others never truly gained momentum. But Giannis is different. He's one of the rare franchise-changing players who could instantly alter the championship picture. That's exactly why opinions have become so emotional. Some believe Miami has to go all in. Others believe going all in could become the biggest mistake of the Pat Riley era. And that's only the beginning. Because behind the headlines are questions about Giannis's future, Miami's assets, Milwaukee's demands, rival teams preparing counteroffers, and one unexpected contender that could steal the entire deal before Miami ever reaches the finish line. This story is much bigger than a trade room. It's about ambition, pressure, legacy, and the price. Every championship contender must eventually decide whether it's willing to pay. Before we dive into every twist behind this blockbuster saga, let me know where you're watching from today. If you're excited to follow every NBA trade rumor, insider report, and breaking story throughout the offseason, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And here's a quick question. Type 1 if you believe Miami should do whatever it takes to get Giannis. Type 2 if you think the Heat should protect their future instead. Why Miami keeps appearing in the Giannis rumors. The reason Miami keeps showing up in this story is not random. This is not one of those rumors where a superstar's name gets attached to every big market team just because it sounds exciting. Miami has been connected to Giannis for several reasons that actually make sense, and that is why the conversation refuses to disappear. The first reason is simple. The Heat need a new direction. For years, Miami has been respected as one of the toughest organizations in the NBA. They develop players, defend hard, survive chaos, and somehow remain dangerous when people count them out. But respect is not the same thing as championship power. At some point, a team cannot keep living off reputation. It has to prove it can still build a roster capable of winning the whole thing. That is where Giannis changes the conversation. He is not just another all-star. He is one of the few players in the league who can instantly change how every opponent prepares. His size, speed, strength, transition pressure, rim attack, and defensive presence force teams to adjust everything. For Miami, a franchise built on toughness and physicality, the idea of adding Giannis feels almost too perfect. Then there is Bam Adebayo. Bam's relationship with Giannis has been one of the biggest reasons this rumor feels believable. Around the NBA, personal relationships do not guarantee trades, but they absolutely matter. Stars talk, players recruit, friendships create comfort. And when a superstar is considering a major career move, knowing that one of his close friends is already inside that locker room can make a destination feel much more realistic. Miami can sell Giannis on more than basketball. They can sell him on culture, weather, lifestyle, stability, and a franchise that has repeatedly found ways to compete deep into the playoffs. They can say, "Come here, and we will build everything around winning," but the Heat are not operating from a position of total strength. That is what makes this story so tense. Miami wants to act like a destination, but destination power only matters if the trade package is strong enough. Milwaukee does not have to care about the beaches, the friendship, or the idea of Heat culture. If the Bucks trade a franchise legend, they need a return that protects their future. So Miami may have the momentum, but momentum does not close the deal. The risk nobody wants to ignore. For all the excitement around Giannis, there is a reason some analysts are warning Miami to be careful. Because trading for a superstar is easy to celebrate in the moment. The headlines explode. The fan base goes wild. The team suddenly looks dangerous on paper. But after the excitement fades, the real question appears. What did you give up, and how long can this version of the superstar last? That is where the Giannis debate becomes complicated. Nobody serious is denying his greatness. Giannis is a two-time MVP, a champion, one of the most dominant physical forces the league has ever seen, and still one of the most terrifying players in basketball. When he is healthy and attacking downhill, there are very few defenders alive who can stop him without help. But Miami would not be trading for Giannis from 5 years ago. They would be trading for Giannis now with a massive contract, enormous expectations, and a body that has already carried a huge workload. That is the concern. His game is built on pressure. He attacks the paint, he absorbs contact, he sprints in transition, he defends, rebounds, drives, finishes, and punishes teams with power. That style has made him special, but it also raises fair questions about aging and durability. Can he keep playing that way for several more seasons? Can Miami build the right spacing around him? Can he stay healthy through the long grind of the regular season and still be explosive in May and June? Those are not disrespectful questions. They are front office questions. Every championship team has to calculate risk. And with Giannis, the risk is not about whether he is great. The risk is about the price. If Miami gives away young players, draft picks, flexibility, and future options, the Heat are not just adding a star. They are choosing a timeline. They would be saying the next few years matter more than the next decade. That can be the right decision. But only if Giannis stays healthy, the roster fits, and the team becomes a real title threat quickly. If not, the same move that looks bold today could look dangerous tomorrow. The Bam Adebayo question. The entire Miami vision depends on one major belief. Giannis and Bam Adebayo can work together. On paper, the idea is powerful. Two elite athletes, two defensive monsters. Two players who can switch, protect the rim, run the floor, attack the paint, and create one of the most physical front courts in the NBA. For a team that has always valued toughness, effort, and defensive discipline, that combination sounds like a dream. But dreams still need spacing. That is where the debate begins. Giannis is at his best when the floor is open and defenders are terrified of his downhill attack. Bam is at his best when he can operate in space, screen, pass, defend, and punish mismatches around the rim and mid-range. Both players are incredibly valuable, but neither is known as a high-volume floor spacer. That means Miami would need the rest of the roster to be built very carefully. The Heat could not afford poor shooting around them. They could not afford slow decision makers. They could not afford lineups where defenders simply pack the paint and dare Miami to win from the outside. That is why some analysts question whether the pairing is enough. They are not saying Bam is not good. Bam is one of the most respected defenders in the league and one of Miami's most important players. But when championship expectations enter the room, the standard changes. If Giannis becomes the number one option, can Bam be the perfect number two? Or would Miami still need another elite shot creator to survive deep playoff series? That question matters because the trade package could remove some of the very pieces Miami needs. If Tyler Herro is gone, where does the shot creation come from? If multiple young players are included, where does the depth come from? If future picks are moved, how does Miami improve later? That is the hidden challenge. Adding Giannis sounds simple, but building around Giannis and Bam is not simple at all. It requires shooting, speed, discipline, and a clear offensive identity. If Miami gets that right, they could become a nightmare. If they get it wrong, they could become powerful but crowded, dangerous but incomplete. And in the playoffs, incomplete teams eventually get exposed. Pat Riley's pressure is becoming impossible to ignore. This is not just about Giannis, this is about Miami's reputation. For years, the Heat have been viewed as a franchise that believes it can get into any superstar conversation. And to be fair, that confidence has been earned. Miami has history, Miami has banners, Miami has Pat Riley. Miami has Eric Spoelstra. Miami has a culture players respect and a city players naturally find attractive. But lately, being in the conversation has not been enough. The Heat have been linked to big names again and again. James Harden, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard. Every time, Miami fans felt the same cycle begin. Rumors started, reports grew, social media exploded. People imagined the jerseys, the lineups, the playoff matchups, the revenge games, the championship run, then nothing happened. Sometimes another team made a better offer. Sometimes the timing was wrong. Sometimes the other front office chose a different direction. And sometimes Miami simply could not close the deal. But regardless of the reason, the pattern has become painful. The Heat are close, but close does not hang banners. That is why Giannis feels different. This is not just another star rumor. This feels like a test of whether Miami can still turn ambition into action. If a player like Giannis is truly available, if Miami is truly on his short list, if Bam's relationship truly helps, and if the Heat still cannot finish the job, the criticism will be loud. Fans will ask, what went wrong? Analysts will question the front office. The league will wonder whether Miami's superstar pull is still as strong as it used to be. And Pat Riley knows the stakes. He built his career on bold moves, big swings, and championship expectations. But the NBA has changed. Assets matter more. Draft control matters more. Salary rules are tighter. Teams do not just give away superstars because a destination looks attractive. That means Miami cannot win this race with reputation alone. They need the right package. They need timing. They need Milwaukee to believe their offer is the best path forward. And if they fail, this could become more than a missed opportunity. It could become a turning point in how people talk about the Heat's future. The trade package problem. This is where the dream starts running into reality. Everybody can imagine Giannis in a Miami Heat jersey. Everybody can picture the first press conference, the packed arena, the highlight reels, the fast breaks, the defensive chaos, the playoff intensity, but imagination does not complete NBA trades. Assets do, and that is Miami's biggest problem. If Milwaukee ever decides to trade Giannis, the Bucks will not be looking for a simple package. They will be moving the greatest player in franchise history, a champion, a two-time MVP, and someone who completely changed their organization. That kind of player does not get traded for an average return. Milwaukee would need young talent. They would need draft picks. They would need financial flexibility. They would need a package that makes sense not only today, but 3, 4, and 5 years from now. So the question becomes obvious. Does Miami have enough? Tyler Herro would almost certainly be one of the main names in any serious discussion. He can score, shoot, create, and still has value around the league. But the issue is whether Milwaukee sees him as the centerpiece of a rebuild. If the Bucks want younger prospects, premium picks, or a different roster direction, Herro alone may not be enough to move the needle. That is why 3-team and 4-team ideas keep appearing. Maybe Miami has to send Herro somewhere else. Maybe another team has to send picks to Milwaukee. Maybe salaries have to be balanced across multiple rosters. Maybe young players, veterans, draft compensation, and contract structures all have to line up perfectly. And that is not easy. The bigger the trade gets, the more fragile it becomes. One team changes its mind and the deal collapses. One player's value is viewed differently and the math breaks. One pick protection becomes a problem and negotiations slow down. One front office decides to wait and the entire timeline shifts. That is why blockbuster rumors can sound simple on television, but become brutal behind closed doors. Miami may want Giannis. Giannis may like Miami. Bam may help the pitch. But Milwaukee has to accept the return. And if the Bucks do not love the package, Miami's dream could disappear before it ever becomes real. What Milwaukee really wants? Milwaukee is the most important voice in this entire story. Not Miami, not Boston, not the analysts, not the fans, not even the rumors. Because unless the Bucks decide the time has come to move Giannis, nothing happens. And if they do reach that point, their next decision becomes one of the most important choices in franchise history. Trading Giannis would not be a normal roster move. It would be the end of an era. This is the player who brought Milwaukee a championship, gave the franchise global attention, and turned the Bucks into a team that mattered every single season. You do not move someone like that unless you have a clear plan. So what would Milwaukee want? The answer is probably not just one thing. They would want draft capital, because picks give a rebuilding franchise options. They would want young players, because fans need something to believe in after losing a superstar. They would want salary flexibility, because being trapped in expensive contracts without a true contender is one of the worst places an NBA team can be. And they would want leverage, because when you trade a player like Giannis, you cannot look desperate. That is why Milwaukee may not rush. The Bucks can listen to Miami. They can listen to Boston. They can listen to dark horse teams. They can use each offer to create pressure on the others. If one team falls short, another may improve its package. If Miami hesitates, Boston could step in. If Boston gets aggressive, Miami may feel forced to raise the price. That is how superstar markets work. The selling team controls the tension until the deadline becomes unavoidable. For Milwaukee, the perfect deal would do two things at once. It would honor the magnitude of what Giannis meant to the franchise while giving the team a real path into its next chapter. Anything less would be dangerous. If they accept a weak offer, fans will never forget it. Every Giannis dunk in another jersey will feel like a reminder. Every loss will reopen the question. Every draft pick that fails will make the trade look worse. That is why the Bucks have to be cold, patient, and strategic. Emotion says keep the legend forever. Reality says prepare for every possibility. And Miami is stuck waiting for Milwaukee to decide which side wins. Why Boston could ruin everything for Miami. The scariest team in this race may not be Miami. It may be Boston. That is the part Heat fans do not want to hear, but it is impossible to ignore. If the Celtics truly enter the Giannis conversation with serious intent, the entire situation changes. Miami may have the relationship angle. Miami may have the lifestyle pitch. Miami may have the long-standing reputation of Heat culture. But Boston has something that could be even more dangerous. A win-now foundation. The Celtics do not need Giannis to rescue them from irrelevance. They are already built to compete. They already have elite talent. They already understand deep playoff basketball. They already have Jason Tatum, one of the league's premier stars. And if they ever decided to reshape the roster around him with Giannis as the second pillar, the Eastern Conference would feel the impact immediately. That is why Jaylen Brown becomes such a massive storyline. If Boston were willing to discuss a deal built around Brown, Milwaukee would have to listen. Brown is not just a role player or a salary piece. He is a proven star, a two-way wing, a champion, and the kind of player who could help Milwaukee stay competitive instead of falling into a total rebuild. That kind of offer could put pressure on Miami instantly, because what can the Heat offer that clearly beats that? More picks? More young players? More complicated multi-team structures? Maybe, but Boston's potential advantage is clarity. A star-for-star framework is easier to understand than a trade package that requires 3 teams, 5 moving parts, salary balancing, and multiple future picks. There is also the championship factor. If Giannis wants to return to title contention immediately, Boston could be extremely attractive. A Giannis-Tatum pairing would not be a patient project. It would be a direct attack on the league. That team would have size, scoring, defensive pressure, playoff experience, and a clear championship mission from day one. Miami's pitch is powerful, Boston's pitch could be terrifying, and that is why the Heat cannot afford to move slowly. In a race for a superstar, hesitation can be fatal. Sometimes the team that wins is not the team with the prettiest story. It is the team that builds the cleanest deal at the right moment. If Boston strikes first, Miami may never get a second chance. The 3 endings Miami could face. There are 3 realistic ways this story can end, and every one of them carries a different kind of pressure. The first ending is the dream scenario for Miami, the Heat land Giannis. Pat Riley finally completes the superstar deal fans have been waiting for. Bam gets his close friend and elite running mate. The franchise instantly becomes one of the biggest stories in basketball. South Beach becomes the center of the NBA offseason, and every national show starts asking the same question: can Miami win the East? That ending would restore belief. It would prove the Heat can still finish a blockbuster. It would give the fan base a new era to rally around, and it would send a message to the rest of the league that Miami is not done chasing championships, but even the dream ending has pressure. Because once Giannis arrives, excuses disappear. Miami would have to win. Not just be interesting, not just make the playoffs, not just create highlights. They would have to build a real contender quickly, because the price of the trade would likely be enormous. The second ending is the painful one. Miami misses again. Maybe Milwaukee prefers Boston's offer. Maybe another team gets aggressive. Maybe the Heat refuse to sacrifice too much. Maybe the salary math becomes too difficult. Whatever the reason, if Giannis lands somewhere else, the reaction in Miami would be brutal. Fans would remember Lillard. They would remember Durant. They would remember every superstar rumor that ended with disappointment. And this one would hurt even more because the pieces seem to make sense. The friendship with Bam, the reported interest, the need for change, the pressure on the organization. Missing this opportunity could create serious questions about Miami's direction. The third ending is limbo. No trade happens. Giannis stays in Milwaukee, at least for now. Miami keeps its assets, Boston waits. The rumors continue. Every few weeks, another report appears. The story never fully dies, but it never becomes real either. That might sound safer, but it could be dangerous too, because limbo can freeze a franchise. If Miami keeps waiting for a superstar, it may miss smaller moves that actually improve the team. If the Heat protect all their assets for a dream that never arrives, they risk wasting valuable time. That is the real challenge. Miami needs ambition, but ambition without execution becomes frustration. They need patience, but patience without progress becomes stagnation. And Giannis is forcing the Heat to confront both truths at once. The lesson behind the Giannis saga. At the center of this entire story is one question every serious NBA franchise eventually has to answer. How much of the future are you willing to sacrifice for a chance to win right now? For Miami, Giannis represents hope, pressure, and danger all at once. He could bring the franchise back to the center of championship conversations. He could give Bam Adebayo the superstar partner he needs. He could restore excitement after years of near misses, difficult endings, and frustrated fans waiting for the next great Heat era to begin. But Giannis also represents risk. If Miami gives up too much, the team could become top-heavy. If the roster loses too much shooting or depth, the fit could become complicated. If injuries become a problem, the entire plan could collapse. And if another contender builds a cleaner offer, Miami could once again be left explaining why the star got away. That is why this decision cannot be driven by emotion. The Heat cannot chase Giannis only because the fan base is impatient. They cannot refuse to chase him only because the price is scary. Great front offices have to live in the uncomfortable middle. They have to understand the dream, measure the risk, protect the organization, and still be brave enough to act when the right moment arrives. There is also a human lesson here. Players are not just assets. Giannis has given everything to Milwaukee. Bam has carried Miami's identity through difficult seasons. Hero and other young players are not just trade pieces on a spreadsheet. They are people whose careers, families, and futures can change overnight because of one front office decision. That is the peaceful truth behind all the drama. The NBA is a business, but it is also built on relationships, trust, sacrifice, and timing. Teams should chase greatness, but they should do it with respect. Players should pursue winning, but they should understand the communities they leave behind. Fans should debate passionately, but remember that every headline involves real people under real pressure. So what should Miami do? If the price is fair, they should be aggressive. Players like Giannis almost never become available. But if the cost destroys the roster and leaves the Heat without enough support to truly compete, walking away may be the smarter kind of courage. Because the goal is not to win the trade headline. The goal is to build a team that can win when the lights are brightest. Now, I want to hear from you. Should Miami go all in for Giannis, or should they protect their future? Type 1 if the Heat should make the trade. Type 2 if they should walk away. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more NBA news and trade drama, and share this with another basketball fan.